Elaine Parker was sitting alone at the dining table just before midnight, going through the same stack of bills Richard kept saying they could barely afford to pay. The house was quiet, in that tired, late-night way. The kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel sharper. Then the printer in Richard's home office started running. At first, Elaine did not move. Richard printed contracts at strange hours all the time. Half the time, he forgot them in the tray until morning, and acted like everyone else had misplaced them. But the printer kept going. One page, then another, then another. Elaine looked down the dark hallway toward his office. Something about it felt wrong. Not loud wrong, not obvious wrong. Just that small, cold feeling a woman gets when the house she has lived in for years suddenly feels like it is holding its breath. She stood up, walked down the hallway, and stepped into Richard's office. The first page was sitting in the tray. Elaine lifted it, and the title stopped her cold. Post-Divorce Asset Transfer Plan, Vanessa. For a second, her eyes refused to move past the words. Post-divorce. Asset transfer. Vanessa. Her fingers tightened around the paper before her mind caught up with what she was reading. The house would go to Richard after the divorce. Elaine would receive the smallest possible settlement. Richard would request 50-50 custody of Sophie to lower child support. Money from the home equity line would be used as a down payment on Vanessa's condo. Then Elaine saw the note at the bottom. Elaine will fight emotionally. Keep her unstable on record. That line did not just hurt. It explained him. It explained the size, the insults, the little comments in front of friends. The way he had been watching her reactions like he was saving them for later. If stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, and quiet power speak to you, subscribe. Because sometimes the truth does not come out through yelling. Sometimes it comes out of a printer tray at midnight. That was when Richard stepped into the doorway. He was wearing the blue shirt Elaine had ironed 2 days earlier. He looked at the page in her hand. Then his face went pale. Elaine looked up at him, her hands trembling now, her voice barely holding together. Was this the life you were planning to steal from me? Before that printed page, Elaine Parker had spent 24 years believing her marriage was safe. Not perfect. No marriage that long is perfect. But safe. She was 51 years old, and more tired than she liked to admit. She worried early. She saved receipts. She checked due dates twice. She still clipped coupons sometimes, even though they were no longer living paycheck to paycheck. She worried about medical bills before they came in the mail. She lowered the thermostat like the electric company was waiting outside with a weapon. Some people called her cautious. Richard used to call her responsible. Later, he would call the same habit anxiety. That was how betrayal worked sometimes. The thing a man once praised you for became the thing he used against you when he wanted out. But if anyone had kept the Parker household standing, it was Elaine. Years earlier, she had worked as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company on the edge of town. She liked numbers, because numbers had rules. A column either balanced, or it did not. A mistake could be found if you were patient enough to look. Numbers did not smile at you over dinner while hiding a second life. After Sophie was born, Elaine kept working for a while. Then Sophie turned 6, and her breathing problems started turning ordinary colds into long nights at urgent care. One cough could become a hospital visit. One fever could become a panic bag by the door. So Elaine cut her hours. Richard said it made sense. Someone had to be available. Someone had to know the doctors, the insurance codes, the pharmacy hours, the school forms, the inhaler schedule, and which nurse at the clinic actually called back. Someone had to remember which teacher needed a form by Friday. Someone had to sit with Sophie when she was scared to sleep because her chest felt tight. Someone had to keep a binder of medical records thick enough to look like a court case. That someone became Elaine. She paid the bills. She tracked the mortgage. She kept the family calendar alive. She drove Sophie to appointments and sat through parent meetings. She remembered prescriptions, dental cleanings, school deadlines. and the kind of details nobody noticed unless they went wrong. And when Richard's mother had hip surgery, Elaine was the one who brought soup, changed sheets, organized medications, and smiled through comments about how busy Richard was. During those years, Richard built his career. Elaine helped him do it. She proofread his proposals when his spelling made him look careless. She reminded him of client birthdays. She packed his suits before conferences. She listened when he came home angry about supervisors, subcontractors, budgets, and men who took credit for his work. Back then, he seemed to notice. At least Elaine believed he did. Richard worked for a commercial construction company. He was not some fantasy millionaire with a private jet and a glass office overlooking the city. He was a middle-aged man who had climbed, step by step, into an operations director position. He made good money. Not wild money. Good money. A solid salary. Decent bonuses. A nice house. A clean truck. Respect in the community. People saw him as a dependable husband, a steady father, and the kind of man who could handle pressure without falling apart. Their marriage was not cinematic. There were no surprise trips to Paris. No love letters tucked inside books. No dramatic speeches in the rain. It was quieter than that. Morning coffee, shared calendars, mortgage payments, Sophie's school pictures in the hallway, the same 2 coffee mugs in the sink. 24 years of small decisions that made a life feel solid. Elaine trusted Richard because she had lived beside him longer than she had lived without him. That is the dangerous thing about long marriages. Trust stops feeling like something you choose. It becomes the floor. You walk on it every day. You do not test it. You do not question it. You just believe it will hold. Until one night, it opens underneath you. 3 years before the printer ran in Richard's office, he started to change. Not all at once. That would have been kinder. At first, he was just sharper around the edges. More tired, less patient. He sighed when Elaine asked simple questions, as if her voice itself had become another bill he had to pay. At dinner, he looked at his phone more than he looked at her. When he came home, he wore the face of a man who wanted credit for suffering, but did not want to explain what he was suffering from. Elaine thought it was work. Then she thought it was middle age. Then stress. Then money. She gave him room. A lot of wives do that. They make excuses before they make accusations. They say he is tired. He is under pressure. He is going through something. He will come back to himself. But room became distance, and distance became a habit. Richard started saying Elaine had lost ambition. At first, he said it gently, almost like concern. You used to want more than this. Elaine did not know what to do with that sentence. Then later, it came colder. You made yourself small, Elaine. That wasn't my decision. That one landed deep, because part of it touched a place she did not like to look at. She had given things up. She had slowed down. She had chosen doctor's offices, grocery lists, school pickups, late-night laundry, Richard's travel schedule, and Sophie's health over her own career. But she had not done it because she lacked ambition. She had done it because somebody had to hold the family together. Richard began acting as if holding a family together was not work. It was just Elaine's role, just something she did, just background noise. He told her she was too focused on Sophie. He said she had become anxious. He said she did not understand what it felt like to be a man in his 50s, carrying a household, a company, a mortgage, and a future. Elaine wanted to tell him that she had been carrying the household too. She wanted to tell him that pressure did not become more noble just because a man complained about it louder. But she swallowed it. That was Elaine's habit. She swallowed the first insult because maybe he was tired. She swallowed the second because maybe she was being sensitive. She swallowed the third because, after 24 years, a person can start protecting the marriage from the truth. The worst part was not that Richard stopped appreciating her. The worst part was that he started using her sacrifices as evidence against her. He said she had let herself fade. He said she lived through their daughter. He said she no longer made him feel admired. And slowly, the woman who had given him stability became the woman he blamed for feeling trapped. At first, Elaine thought Richard was just tired. Then the tiredness became distance, and the distance became a pattern. He started coming home later. Not every night. Every night would have been too easy to question. It was just often enough to become normal. A client dinner on Tuesday, a site visit that ran long on Thursday, a weekend meeting with a subcontractor who, apparently, did not believe in business hours, a late-night budget review that could not wait until morning. When Richard came home, he went straight to the shower. Elaine noticed that first. He used to drop his keys in the bowl by the door, loosen his tie, and complain from the kitchen like he was still half at work and half home. Now he walked past her like the house was a hotel lobby. Shower first. Conversation later. Sometimes no conversation at all. His phone changed too. Not the phone itself. The way he handled it. Screen down on the table. Face ID angled away from her. Notifications hidden. A new passcode he claimed was required by work. His laptop password changed after years of being Sophie's birthday. Elaine asked him once. Richard smiled like she had disappointed him. Do we really have to do this at our age? That was how he started making her questions sound embarrassing. If she asked why he was late, she was insecure. If she asked about money, she was controlling. If she asked why he was dressing better for site visits than he had dressed for their last anniversary dinner, she was bitter. He bought new shirts, better cologne, whitening strips. A gym membership he used, just enough to make it believable. He started trimming his beard more carefully on Friday afternoons, then said weekend meetings were part of leadership. The lie was not loud. It was tidy. That made it worse. Richard was not only hiding things from Elaine, he was preparing other people to doubt her before she even knew she would need to speak. At a neighborhood barbecue, Elaine heard him tell an old friend, "She's been unstable lately." He said it softly, almost sadly, with that wounded husband tone some men use when they want sympathy without having to provide facts. Elaine froze beside the patio table, holding a bowl of pasta salad, feeling the words settle on her skin. Unstable. Not tired. Not overwhelmed. Not carrying too much. Unstable. Later, in the car, she asked why he had said that. Richard did not apologize. He kept his eyes on the road and said, "Because sometimes you are." That was when Elaine felt the ground shift a little. Not enough to run. Enough to remember. After that, Richard began planting the same idea around Sophie. Not direct attacks. Small seeds. Your mom worries too much. Your mom doesn't understand adult money problems. Your mom hears one thing and turns it into a crisis. Sophie was 16. Old enough to notice tension. Young enough to wonder if some of it was her fault. Elaine hated him for bringing their daughter into it before she even understood why he was doing it. But Richard was not finished. The money started tightening. He told Elaine they had to cut back. No extra tutoring unless Sophie truly needed it. No dental treatment until the insurance estimate came back. No car repair unless the warning light stayed on. No replacing the old dishwasher. No touching savings. He made it sound responsible. He made it sound mature. He made Elaine feel childish for wanting basic stability. Then he would sit at the dining table, rubbing his forehead, saying, "You have no idea what I'm trying to keep afloat." Elaine believed him longer than she should have, because that was what wives like Elaine did. They believed the man who came home tired. They blamed the economy, the mortgage, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the rising price of just being alive. They told themselves stress made people cruel before they admitted cruelty might be the point. But the numbers began to bother her. Richard said they were cutting back, but his business expenses kept rising. Client dinners, vendor gifts, travel meals, site expenses, fuel reimbursements. Small charges, nothing that screamed. They whispered. And Elaine had spent too many years with ledgers not to hear a whisper. Richard's gaslighting had two hands. With one, he made Elaine feel selfish for asking where the money went. With the other, he quietly built a record that made her look emotional, suspicious, and unstable. That was the part she did not see at first. She thought she was trying to understand her marriage. Richard was already preparing for war. Elaine did not find the affair first. She found the money. And money, unlike people, rarely lies well. The first real crack opened because Sophie needed dental treatment. Nothing dramatic, nothing life-threatening. Just one of those expensive procedures that sits in that cruel space between necessary and impossible, depending on who controls the checkbook. Richard looked at the estimate and sighed like Elaine had personally invented orthodontics to punish him. "We can't do this right now," he said. Elaine reminded him they had savings. Richard's face hardened. "We are not touching savings for something that can wait." Sophie heard enough from the hallway to go quiet for the rest of the night. That was what made Elaine open the credit card statement. Not suspicion. A mother's anger. Later, after the house had gone quiet, Elaine sat at the dining table with her laptop open and her glasses low on her nose. She scrolled through the charges Richard had described as routine business costs. Then she saw it. $612.40. Magnolia Suites. Business client dinner. Elaine stared at the line for a long time. Magnolia Suites was not a restaurant. It was a hotel 22 minutes from their house. She knew because she searched the name right there, with the same cold feeling she used to get when a ledger refused to balance. Then she checked the date. That was when her stomach tightened. It was the same night Richard said he had to sleep near a job site because there was an early meeting the next morning. Elaine did not call him. She did not wake him. She kept scrolling. Because once you see the first thread, the whole sweater starts looking different. A jewelry store charge marked as a vendor gift. A florist marked as an office arrangement. A weekend rental car. A dinner for two at a restaurant Richard had always claimed to hate. A Zelle payment to V. Lane. Then another. Then another. Elaine typed the name carefully. Vanessa Lane. She did not hack anything. She did not break into anything. She did not need to. Vanessa had a public real estate profile with a bright smile, soft blonde hair, and a slogan about helping people find their next chapter. Elaine almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes the universe has absolutely no taste. The first payoff was simple and brutal. Richard was having an affair. But the affair was not the worst thing. It was only the doorway. 2 days later, Elaine was looking for an old insurance form in Richard's desk when she found a folder tucked underneath warranty papers and tax envelopes. Inside was a draft divorce petition. Not finished. Not filed. But real enough to make her sit down. Richard had been planning this. There were notes about temporary possession of the house. Notes about custody. Notes about Elaine's emotional state. Notes about settlement pressure. Notes about keeping the process clean before she could, in his words, create chaos. That phrase made her hands shake. Create chaos. Elaine had spent years preventing chaos. Now Richard was preparing to accuse her of being its source. For 1 minute, she wanted to do what people always imagined they would do. Wake him up. Throw the papers at his chest. Demand every answer. Call Vanessa. Tell Sophie. Burn the whole polished lie to the ground. Then she remembered something her friend Marcy had said after her own divorce. The person who reacts first usually loses control of the story. Elaine sat very still. Stillness did not mean she was calm. It meant she understood the room had changed. From that night forward, she stopped asking Richard questions he could lie through. She scanned what she could legally access. She printed bank statements. She saved credit card records. She copied mortgage documents, tax returns, insurance forms, school emails, and medical appointment logs. She kept everything factual. No spying, no threats, no dramatic confrontation. Just paper. Clean, boring, devastating paper. Then she created a folder on a flash drive and gave it a name Richard would not understand until it was far too late. For Denise. By the time Elaine Parker walked into Denise Harper's office, she was no longer looking for someone to tell her she was right. She already knew what Richard had done. What she needed now was someone who could tell her what would matter. Comfort had its place. Maybe. But comfort would not keep the house. Comfort would not protect Sophie. Comfort would not stop Richard from taking 24 years of marriage, reducing it to a spreadsheet, and using it as seed money for another woman's future. Denise Harper was 61, with silver hair cut neatly along her jaw, and a face that gave away almost nothing. She had the kind of quiet that made people lower their voices without knowing why. Her office did not try to feel warm. There were no soft candles, no healing quotes in gold frames, no gentle music playing in the background. Just case files, black coffee, and a long wooden table where wounded people learned the difference between pain and proof. Elaine sat across from her and placed the folder on the table. Denise did not open it right away. She studied Elaine for a moment, then asked one question. What can you prove? Not what did he say. Not what do you feel. Not what do you believe he meant. Not how badly did he break your heart. What can you prove? And in that moment, Elaine understood she had found the right attorney. She opened the folder. Her hands were steadier than she expected. Maybe because the worst part had already happened in her mind. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage records, home equity documents, tax returns, Richard's bonus history, school pickup logs, Sophie's medical appointment records, emails Richard had ignored, calendar screenshots of the nights he had disappeared into work, or so he claimed. And beneath all of it, the page that had ended the old version of Elaine's life. Post-divorce asset transfer plan, Vanessa. Denise read every page without rushing. She did not gasp. She did not curse Richard. She did not call him evil, or selfish, or stupid. She did not offer Elaine revenge wrapped up as justice. That would have been too easy. And Denise Harper did not seem like a woman who trusted easy things. After several minutes, she removed her glasses and set them on the table. In our state, Denise said carefully, the evidence may matter. Not because cheating by itself destroys a person in court. People misunderstand that. A judge is not there to punish heartbreak. But marital money, custody claims, financial disclosures, and asset transfers have to be honest. Elaine nodded once. Her throat was tight, but she did not cry. Not there. Not in that office. Denise tapped the first page of Richard's plan. This is not just an affair, she said. This is preparation. Elaine looked down at the page. Preparation. That word hurt in a different way. An affair could still be dressed up as weakness if someone was desperate enough to lie kindly. Bad timing. Loneliness. A mistake that went too far. Preparation was colder. Preparation meant Richard had sat somewhere with coffee beside him, his phone probably turned face down, and made decisions about Elaine's life as if she were not a person, as if she were a problem to be managed. As if the wife who carried his household for decades had become an obstacle on paper. Denise started with the money. She told Elaine they would need financial discovery, real records. Not Richard's version of hardship, not the story he planned to tell with tired eyes and a careful voice. She wanted tax returns, pay stubs, bonus documents, retirement statements, credit card charges, business reimbursement records, mortgage papers, any file Elaine had legal access to through joint accounts, shared household documents, or records Richard had already kept inside the home. No hacking, no guessing, no dramatic traps, just documents. That was Denise's way. Richard had told Elaine the company was struggling. He said bonuses were uncertain. He said savings had to stay untouched because the future was unstable. But the records Elaine brought in told another story. A bonus that normally arrived in December had been delayed without a clear explanation. A supposed loan from Richard's mother appeared in his notes, but Elaine had never seen money come into their account. A new LLC had been registered using an address tied to one of Richard's subcontractors. And his expense reports had grown heavier during the exact months he claimed their family needed to cut back. Then came Vanessa. The payments started small. A dinner, flowers, a hotel room. Then they grew. A designer bag marked as a vendor gift, a weekend rental car, a deposit Elaine could not connect to any construction project, transfers to Vanessa Lane, hidden behind casual labels that were almost insulting in how little effort they showed. Denise did not smile when she saw them. She simply wrote notes. That was worse for Richard. A smile would have been emotional. Notes became evidence. After the money, Denise moved to custody. Richard had already started using the words 50-50, like a man who had just discovered parenting could lower a payment. He said Sophie needed both parents equally. On paper, that sounded decent, even noble. But real life had records too. And Richard had missed a great deal of real life. Elaine had school pickup logs. She had emails from teachers addressed only to her, because Richard almost never responded. She had appointment summaries from Sophie's pulmonologist, dental reminders, therapy invoices. Messages where Richard canceled plans with Sophie because of work, meetings, networking, or that vague little phrase he leaned on whenever he did not want to explain himself. Something came up. Something always came up. Denise read those messages carefully. "How old is Sophie now?" she asked. 16, Elaine said. Denise looked up. Old enough to understand more than adults hope she does. Elaine looked away. That was the part that made her feel sick. Richard was not just trying to leave his wife. He was trying to turn fatherhood into a discount. For years, he had let Elaine carry the invisible work of parenting. The forms, the doctor visits, the missed sleep, the school meetings. The emotional weather of a teenage girl trying to grow up inside a house that no longer felt safe. Now Richard wanted equal credit when the numbers mattered. Denise told Elaine to keep a parenting calendar from that day forward. Not a diary, not a place to pour pain. A record. Who drove Sophie to school? Who attended meetings? Who paid for activities? Who picked up prescriptions? Who remembered the appointments? Who showed up when showing up was boring? Because that, Denise said, was where many parents told the truth without intending to. Then came child support. Richard had already told Elaine not to expect much. He used the tired, reasonable voice he saved for moments when he wanted cruelty to sound like maturity. He said his income was not what she thought. He said the court would understand he was under pressure. He said if Elaine made things ugly, everyone would suffer, especially Sophie. Elaine had believed a lot of things during her marriage. She did not believe that anymore. Because the same man who said they could not afford Sophie's dental treatment had found money for Vanessa's hotel rooms. The man who said savings could not be touched had planned to draw equity from the family home for Vanessa's condo. The man who called Elaine anxious had built an entire budget around leaving her with as little as possible. Denise leaned back in her chair. Men like Richard often mistake control for intelligence, she said. They think because they have been lying longer, they are better prepared. Elaine asked what she should do when Richard confronted her. Denise did not hesitate. Do not give him the performance he is trying to document. Elaine understood exactly what she meant. No furious text messages, no midnight phone calls, no threats, no pleading, no paragraphs he could print later and hand to someone with a sad look on his face. If Richard wanted unstable on record, Elaine would give him silence, calendars, receipts, and complete sentences. Then Denise warned her about one more thing. Richard might come after her through Sophie. Elaine's face went cold. Denise had seen it before. A parent desperate to delay child support. A parent trying to create doubt where there had never been any. A parent with no real evidence, but just enough cruelty to say something that could not be unsaid. 2 weeks later, Richard did exactly that. Through his attorney, Richard suggested he was not fully certain Sophie was his biological child. Elaine read the sentence 3 times. Then she had to sit down. Not because she doubted the truth. She never doubted the truth. Sophie was 16. Sophie had Richard's eyes. Sophie had his stubborn chin. Richard had held that child in a hospital chair, with oxygen tubes under her nose, and promised, in a shaking voice, that he would always protect her. Now he was willing to turn her existence into a legal tactic. Not because he believed it, because it might save him money. Elaine wanted to break something. Instead, she called Denise. Denise's voice stayed calm. "If he asks for a DNA test, we let the process work," she said. "You do not defend yourself like a guilty person. Let the facts answer him." So Elaine did. She folded the paper, placed it in the folder, and added another label. Sophie. That was the night Elaine stopped thinking of Richard as only a husband who had betrayed her. He had become something colder. A man who would bruise his own daughter if it helped him pay less. But the document that changed everything did not come from a bank. It came from the woman Richard thought he was building a new life with. Elaine found it on a Thursday morning because Richard, careful as he thought he was, had made one ordinary mistake. Years earlier, he had used the family email account for travel rewards, hotel points, and household purchases. Most of the time, nothing important came through that account anymore. Grocery coupons, school notices, old subscription reminders. The kind of clutter only the person running the house bothered to check. Elaine was searching for a receipt from Sophie's dentist when she saw the subject line. New family budget after settlement. The sender was Vanessa Lane. For a few seconds, Elaine did not open it. She just stared. New family. Not future budget. Not household estimate. New family. Richard had not simply stepped outside his marriage. He had renamed the life Elaine built and handed the title to another woman. Elaine opened the email. There was a spreadsheet attached. At the top, Vanessa had written, "I adjusted the numbers based on what you said. Elaine will probably get." That one sentence told Elaine 2 things. Vanessa was not an innocent woman who believed Richard was already separated. And Richard had been discussing Elaine's future, like she was furniture they had not finished pricing. The spreadsheet listed estimated proceeds from selling the Parker home. It listed the home equity draw. It listed reduced child support if Richard received 50-50 custody. It listed projected legal fees. It listed a condo down payment under Vanessa's name. It listed nursery furniture, medical costs, a new SUV lease, and a savings plan for the baby. The baby. Elaine stared at that word until the room blurred around it. Vanessa was pregnant. Richard had not told Elaine. He had not told Sophie, but he had budgeted for the child. There was a note in one of the cells. Delay Elaine until filing. She'll settle if scared. Elaine did not move for a long time. Some betrayals burn. This one froze. She could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the faint tick of the wall clock, the soft, everyday sounds of a house that did not know it had already been marked for division. Richard had told Vanessa that Elaine was cold, that she was unstable, that she would not receive much, that Sophie might not be his, that Vanessa and the baby were his real family now. Real family. As if Elaine had been a rehearsal. As if Sophie had been an expense category. As if 24 years could be overwritten by a spreadsheet and a younger woman with a condo picked out. Elaine forwarded the email to Denise. Then she printed it. Then she sat at the table until her breathing slowed. That was the beginning of Elaine's double life. On the outside, she remained Mrs. Parker. She made coffee in the morning. She asked Sophie about school. She signed permission slips. She bought groceries. She answered Richard in short, normal sentences. She did not stare at him when he came home late. She did not ask where he had been. She did not give him another chance to rehearse. Richard mistook her silence for weakness. Men like him often do. He thought Elaine was tired. He thought she was scared. He thought she was still the woman who swallowed insults to keep peace in the house. He did not understand that peace had already left. On the inside, Elaine prepared. She met Denise 2 more times. She opened an individual bank account for her own paycheck. She checked her credit. She froze what needed to be protected. She copied mortgage papers, retirement statements, insurance documents, and tax files. She kept a careful parenting calendar. She saved every message where Richard canceled on Sophie, ignored school events, or blamed Elaine for asking basic questions. And most importantly, she signed nothing. Richard tried. One evening, he placed a document on the kitchen table, like he was offering her mercy. Temporary Separation Agreement. Elaine looked at the title. Richard sat across from her, calm in the way men act when they believe they are holding the knife under the table. "This is the cleanest way," he said. "Don't make it ugly." Elaine read the first page, then the second, then the third. She would leave the house temporarily for emotional space. Richard would remain in the home for Sophie's stability. Elaine would receive limited support while they worked through mediation. Custody would be shared equally. Major assets would be reviewed later. Later. That was the word people used when they wanted you to hand over control before you knew what it cost. Elaine set the agreement down. "Did your attorney draft this?" Richard's jaw shifted. "It's standard." "That is not what I asked." His eyes sharpened. "There you go again." Elaine almost smiled. There it was. The little switch. The moment a simple question became evidence of her instability. She stood up, walked to the hall cabinet, and came back with a folder. Not the whole file. Just enough. She placed it on the table and opened it. Magnolia Suites. Transfers to Vanessa Lane. The asset transfer plan. The new family budget. The condo down payment. The note about keeping Elaine unstable on record. Richard's face changed slowly. First annoyance, then calculation, then fear. He reached for the papers, but Elaine placed her hand over them. "No." His eyes lifted to hers. "You went through my private documents." "Our joint accounts," Elaine said. "Our home office. Our family email, our mortgage, our money." Richard exhaled hard, as if she was the one being unreasonable. "You have no idea what you are looking at." "I know exactly what I am looking at." "No, you don't," he said. "Vanessa is pregnant." Elaine said nothing, to finally say it out loud, as if pregnancy made betrayal honorable. "I have to do the right thing," he said. Elaine stared at the man she had loved for almost half her life. "The right thing," she repeated. He leaned forward. "You and I have been over for years. You know that. You made this house miserable. You made me feel like I was just a paycheck. Vanessa understands me." Elaine listened, not because his words mattered, because Denise had taught her that liars often confess when they think they are explaining themselves. Richard pointed at the papers. "You cannot prove half of this!" Elaine looked down at the folder, then back at him. "I do not need to prove it to you." His face hardened. "You will lose if you fight me." Elaine's hands were shaking under the table. Her voice was not, "You tried to make me look unstable so you could steal my life politely." Richard stood. "This is why I kept records." Elaine stood too. So did I. The room went quiet in a way their house had never been quiet before. For the first time, Richard looked at her as if she was not the woman he had planned around. She was the obstacle he had underestimated. He said her name once, lower now. "Elaine." She picked up the folder. "I am not fighting you in this kitchen," she said. "I am meeting you in court." Richard walked in the court, believing Elaine had one folder and the wounded heart. He had no idea Denise Harper had spent weeks building a wall out of his own lies. On the morning of the first major hearing, Richard arrived in a navy suit Elaine had helped him choose 3 years earlier. That was the kind of detail that would have hurt her once. The suit, the tie, the shoes she had reminded him to polish before client meetings. Now it just looked like costume work. He looked polished, controlled, almost sad. In that careful way some men look when they want strangers to believe divorce has wounded them just as much as the woman they plan to leave behind. Vanessa sat a few rows behind him. She wore a cream-colored dress, one hand resting on the curve of her stomach. She was not hiding the pregnancy. She was not fully displaying it either, just enough to be noticed. Just enough to suggest Richard had a future waiting for him. If only Elaine would stop being difficult and get out of the way. Richard did not look back when Elaine entered. That was fine. Elaine no longer needed him to see her. Denise sat beside her with 3 binders, a legal pad, and a pen that looked far too ordinary for the amount of damage it was about to do. Richard's attorney began with the story Richard had been rehearsing. His income had decreased. The company was unstable. He wanted shared custody because Sophie needed both parents. He had concerns about Elaine's emotional reactions. He wanted the divorce handled with dignity. He could not afford excessive child support. It sounded reasonable. That was the dangerous part. Lies sound better when they wear a suit and speak softly. If you did not know where to look, Richard sounded like a tired husband trying to be fair. Then Denise stood. She did not sound angry. She did not need to. She began with child support. Richard had claimed reduced income, so Denise produced his bonus history. She produced deferred compensation emails. She produced expense reports showing his spending patterns during the same months he claimed the family had to cut back. She showed transfers to Vanessa, hotel bills, gift purchases, the home equity planning notes. The money did not disappear. It had simply been redirected. Richard had not become poor. He had become selective about which life he wanted to fund. No one had to say that out loud. The record said it for him. The judge asked Richard direct questions. Richard gave long answers. That was Richard's mistake. Long answers are where dishonest people go when the truth is too small to hide behind. Denise kept bringing him back. Dates, amounts, accounts, names. No speeches. No outrage. Just the kind of questions that made every lie feel heavier than the one before it. By the end of that section, Richard's hardship no longer looked like hardship. It looked like strategy. Then custody came up. Richard said he wanted 50-50 custody because he loved Sophie. Denise did not argue with the word love. That would have been a waste of time. Instead, she opened the parenting calendar. In 18 months, Richard had missed parent-teacher meetings, medical appointments, therapy sessions, dental visits, weekend proximity, school pickup days, and a college planning appointment Sophie had specifically asked him to attend. There were emails from teachers addressed only to Elaine because Richard never answered. There were texts from Richard canceling plans. There were records showing Elaine had done the daily work Richard now wanted equal credit for. The quiet work, the unglamorous work, the work that did not look impressive in a courtroom until someone put it in a binder. The judge did not say much. Somehow, that made it worse. Silence in a courtroom can be heavier than anger. Then came the DNA test. Richard's attorney tried to present it gently, like a difficult question raised during a painful marital breakdown. Denise let the result enter the record. Sophie was Richard's daughter. No doubt, no gap, no escape. Elaine kept her eyes on the table. Not because she was ashamed. There was nothing for her to be ashamed of. She kept her eyes down, because if she looked at Richard in that moment, she might finally hate him in a way that would cost her peace. The judge's expression changed when Denise explained the timing. Richard had raised doubts about paternity only after child support became an issue. Only after custody became leverage. Only after he had already begun planning a new family with Vanessa. He had not simply attacked Elaine. He had placed Sophie's identity on the table because he thought it might save him money. That was the moment Richard stopped looking like a tired husband. He started looking exactly like what he was. A man willing to bruise his own child to protect his wallet. Then Denise moved to the hidden assets. The new LLC, the supposed loan from Richard's mother, the home equity draw, the asset transfer plan, the condo down payment, the budget Vanessa had sent by mistake. Each page landed quietly. No drama, no shouting, no grand speech, just the soft sound of paper becoming consequence. Richard had planned a clean exit. The court did not give him one. The hidden assets were pulled into the marital estate. The money spent on Vanessa became part of the financial discussion. Child support was calculated against a fuller picture of Richard's income and earning capacity. His request for 50-50 custody lost its shine and started to look less like devotion and more like arithmetic. A portion of Elaine's attorney fees was assigned to Richard. Not all of it. Enough. Enough to hurt. Enough to make the point. And the house, the one he had planned to hold while Elaine left quietly, did not become the trophy he had promised Vanessa. That was the first collapse. The second came from work. Some of Richard's expense reports involved hotel stays, gifts, and travel connected to Vanessa. Once those records entered formal proceedings, they became difficult to keep hidden. Eventually, his company began an internal review. Elaine did not call his boss. She did not post online. She did not whisper to the neighbors. She did not need to make him look bad. Richard had done that in writing. Elaine simply let the documents travel through the channels Richard himself had created. A few weeks later, he lost his title. Then he lost the job. Vanessa did not enjoy the new version of Richard. Not the version with child support. Legal fees. No house. No executive position. No easy money. No polished story where Elaine was the bitter wife and Vanessa was the brave new beginning. That version of Richard was not nearly as charming. After the divorce, Richard tried to hold on to Vanessa like she was proof that all the damage had meant something. He signed a small condo lease with her. He gave her access to an account. He bought things for the baby. He told people he was starting over. People love that phrase. Starting over. It sounds clean. It sounds brave. But Richard was not starting over. He was standing in the wreckage of what he had chosen. And Vanessa, it turned out, had her own plans. People who build love on stolen ground should not be surprised when the floor gives way. Vanessa emptied the account. She sold what she could. Then she left. No long goodbye. No loyalty speech. No woman standing beside him while the world punished him. Just gone. Later, Richard learned the final insult. The baby was not his. The DNA test confirmed it. There are moments in life so cruel they almost look designed. But Elaine had not designed that one. Richard had. He lost his wife. He lost the house he tried to take. He lost the money he tried to hide. He lost the career that made him feel untouchable. He lost the woman he destroyed his family for. And finally, he lost the story he had been telling himself. The one where he was misunderstood. The one where Elaine was unstable. The one where Vanessa was his future. In the end, there was no future waiting for Richard. Only receipts. 3 years after the divorce, Elaine Parker was no longer the woman Richard had tried to erase. Her office sat on the second floor of a quiet brick building downtown. It was nothing flashy, no marble lobby, no expensive art on the walls. Just clean windows, sturdy chairs, and her name printed on the glass door in simple black letters. Elaine Parker, Financial Records Consulting. It was not a giant company. It did not need to be. It was hers. She helped women organize bank records, prepare financial documents for attorneys, rebuild credit, and understand where the money had really gone after years of being told they were confused, emotional, or bad with numbers. Elaine never called it revenge. She called it work. And the work grew because women trusted her. They came in with shaking hands, grocery bags full of statements, and the same hollow look Elaine once had at her dining table. Elaine knew that look. She knew what it meant to feel foolish for trusting. She knew what it meant to stare at a bank statement and realize your marriage had been telling the truth before your husband ever did. So she gave them coffee. Then she gave them order. That was how her life rebuilt itself. Not all at once. One file at a time. One client at a time. One quiet victory at a time. By then, Elaine was married to Robert Miller. Robert was 56, a widowed CPA with steady hands and a calm voice. He did not enter Elaine's life like a savior. He never acted like he had pulled her from the ashes. That was one of the reasons she trusted him. He respected what she had built. He helped her review contracts. He repaired the old conference table in her office. When Elaine had client meetings she could not move, he drove Sophie to visit college campuses and sent Elaine pictures from the road. He did not replace Elaine's strength. He made room for it. And when people said Robert had helped Elaine rebuild her life, he always corrected them. She built it, he would say. I just made sure she didn't have to carry every box alone. Their marriage was quiet. No performance. No need to prove anything to anyone. Just two adults who knew what loss looked like and chose peace anyway. Then Richard came back. He showed up one cold afternoon outside Elaine's office, standing near the front steps in a wrinkled coat. He looked older than 57. Not because age had been especially cruel to him, but because consequences had a way of draining the posture out of a man. His career was gone. Vanessa was gone. The condo was gone. The money he had hidden was gone. The child he thought would be his new beginning had not even been his. He had lost the house he tried to take from Elaine. He had lost the job he used to impress Vanessa. And then Vanessa had taken what was left and disappeared. Richard waited until Elaine stepped outside. For a second she barely recognized him. Not because his face had changed so much. Because the power had. Elaine, he said, I made a mistake. Vanessa used me. I lost everything. Elaine looked at him calmly. No, Richard. You lost what you tried to steal. His eyes filled. You were the only woman who ever stood by me. Elaine held his gaze. No. I was the woman you thought would stay after you finished breaking her. Behind her, the office door opened. Robert stepped out, holding Elaine's coat. He did not threaten Richard. He did not have to. He simply stood beside her. Elaine took the coat. Then she reached for Robert's hand. Richard said her name one last time. Elaine did not turn around. She walked away with the man who loved the woman she had become. And that was the part Richard had never planned for. Not Elaine crying, not Elaine begging, not Elaine broken. Elaine free. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, and the quiet moments when people finally take their power back.